You ask and we provide. Dr. Kelly Victory comes back with us today. You can follow her on X at Dr. Kelly Victory. Kelly is Kelly. She needs no introduction. She has been a really important part of this show since its inception. And she is joined today by Senator Ron Johnson. You can follow him at Ron Johnson, WI. He's a senator from Wisconsin, thus the W. And he was elected in 2010 and has been on multiple leadership positions since. I will get into that a little bit as we roll into the show. You can also follow him at, X is Ron Johnson, WI. Also, the government page is Senator, SEN, Ron Johnson. So, Kelly Victory, Senator Ron Johnson, after this.
Our laws, as it pertains to substances, are draconian and bizarre. The psychopaths start this way. He was an alcoholic because of social media and pornography, PTSD, love addiction, fentanyl and heroin. Ridiculous.
I'm a doctor, for sake. Where the hell do you think I learned that?
I'm just saying, you go to treatment before you kill people.
I am a clinician. I observe things about these chemicals.
Let's just deal with what's real.
We used to get these calls on Loveline all the time. Educate adolescents and to prevent and to treat.
If you have trouble you can't stop and you want to help stop it, I can help. I got a lot to say. I got a lot more to say.
Joint and muscle pains are exhausting and frustrating, but I've got a over-the-counter medication I want to introduce you to that provides great relief using the power of, check it out, chili peppers. Capsadyn is made with a proprietary formula that contains no non-steroidal anti-inflammatory agents, no opioids, no anesthetic or steroid, nothing, no chance for addiction, no side effects, no chance it's going to interact with other medication you might be taking. Capsadyn contains capsaicin, which is the substance in chili peppers that burns your tongue. That gives you that burny feeling. And of course, I've recommended capsaicin creams to patients over the years, but other capsaicin creams burn your skin. That's what makes Capsadyn so unique. In clinical trials, Capsadyn has actually been demonstrated not to burn.
I've been using Capsadyn to relieve my pain in my hands and my wrist from carpal tunnel syndrome and arthritis. The results have been amazing. I use it every day during my show, and I highly recommend it.
Get the pain relief you need from various sources, even backache, sprains, bruises even. Order now at capsadyn.com/Drew to get a 15% discount plus free shipping. That is CAPSADYN, capsadyn.com/DREW. So, Caleb, why don't we throw up upcoming guests very quickly, and then we're going to bring Dr. Kelly Victory in here. And I know you guys are on the Restream and the Rumble Rants are very excited. Oh, Susan's show today at 3 o'clock with Amanda McCants, who, if you don't know who she is hysterical. I'm anxious to meet her. I love her stuff. Ivor Cummins coming back in. We're going to have a couple days off next week. Let's look at that. I don't know if we have the schedule. There should be up there. We have Viva Fry coming in on Thursday. Ivor Cummins coming in on September 3rd.
We're going to Boca.
We're going to be in Boca Raton at a separate studio. September 4th, Rob Schneider. September 5th, Salty Cracker in the house. Matt Walsh, followed by Michael Gates, my new inspiration. And Joel Pollack on September 11th, and Marty Makary. I can never get his name right. I've been reading his book, Blind Spots, for quite some time now, and agree with 90% of what's in there. So I'm sure another person that will agree with that, and I'm seeing all the love for Dr. Victory on the Restream. Please welcome Dr. Kelly Victory.
Hey, Drew. Great to be back, as always. You know, every once in a while, before the clock even starts ticking, I know that we have a show where we're going to run out of time. And this is one of them because Senator Ron Johnson, who's going to be joining us momentarily, is really one of my favorite people. He's one of the titans in Congress, one of the few people in Washington who actually gets stuff done. And for that, I am eternally grateful. He has been really remarkable. And on top of that, wrote the foreword to a new book in which I'm a participant author. So hopefully we'll get into that a little bit as well. Yes, Toxic Shot.
It's a compendium. It is encyclopedic. Everything's in there. Very good.
Thank you for that. It is, I have to say, with truly humbly, it is one of the most well-referenced books out there. It is very, very broad in its scope. The different chapters were written by people who are really expert in these areas, but it brings the receipts. It delivers the goods. If you are looking for something that's written really with a little bit of a lay angle to it, so that it's not written just for clinicians or for scientists. It is something that's very approachable for the average person. If you're a parent looking for backup and for references, for example, for why you don't want your child to be vaccinated or to receive specifically one of these shots, this is the book. And as I said, Senator Johnson wrote a really brilliant and very compelling foreword to the book.
I will bring him in 1 second, except I know we were watching a little old clip as we were rolling into the show. You and I were watching it for sure, with Joseph Fryman and Jessica Rose. And he was talking about how one of his study participants, a rheumatologist from UCLA, never got any follow-up on a 7-year-old child that died 30 hours after the shot. I also had a 100-year-old patient that had a very dangerous reaction within hours, almost minutes of getting the shot. Of course, 100-year-olds don't like go to the hospital. She insisted I manage her at home. It was very dangerous. I wrote and she made it through. And I wrote a report to VAERS, followed up. Thank you. We don't think it's essentially saying, not specifically, but we follow up on important things. We follow up when there's really a link to the shot. So both on the beginning years of life, they ignore it, and on the end of life, both of which, when these reactions are most disturbing and potentially most dangerous. So let's bring in Senator Ron Johnson. As I said,
don't kid yourself.
Go ahead.
Wait, Drew,
go ahead.
Don't kid yourself. They ignored the ones in the middle too. They ignored they ignored all of them. You won't find what you won't look for, and they have truly, to this day, as we sit here at the end of August of 2024, the number of actual VAERS reports that have been fully investigated by the CDC or anybody whose mandate it is to look at and manage that database, they have been totally remiss. They have abdicated their duty, and they have fundamentally let the American people down on that regard.
Follow Kelly on X at Dr. Kelly Victory. And Senator Ron Johnson from Wisconsin, elected in 2010, chairman of the Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs Committees from 2015 to 21, now ranking member for the Permanent Subcommittee on Investigations. He also serves on the Budget, Foreign Relations, and Commerce, Science, and Transportation Committees. I don't know how he has time to spend time with us, but I am deeply grateful that you're here and that you serve on those committees. So I don't want to take too much of your time. It makes me feel like I want to get you back to work. But Senator Johnson, thank you for being here.
Hello, doctors. Thanks for having me back on. And I was actually going to make the exact same comment that Dr. Victory made in terms of VAERS. They're ignoring them all. I think worldwide we have over 37,000 deaths reported in association with the COVID vaccine. 24% of those deaths are occurring on day 0, 1, or 2. So within 2 days of vaccination, and I guess there's just nothing to see here. I think one of the things I pointed out in my foreword, which was really just the history that I went through, was in, I think it was April of 2021, when we were already seeing thousands of deaths on VAERS system. Back then it was like 46% were occurring within the first 2 days, because we were primarily administering them to the elderly. I had a meeting with Francis Collins with a bunch of other Republican senators, and I asked him about what VAERS was showing him. He admitted to 6 deaths associated with the Johnson & Johnson because of clotting. But for the other thousands, he said, hey, Senator, people die. That was how callous his response was. That was pretty much their attitude toward their own safety surveillance system, which they were singing the praises of in October of 2020 before they got the emergency use authorization. But once the actual data started coming in, they just wanted to run away from it. They've been running away from it ever since.
I'm going to let Kelly drive this a little bit, but I want to ask one quick question that's constantly roils in my brain, which is what happened here? What has gone on to my profession, to science, to journalism, to the government, to our discourse? What's your theory? I mean, is it, well, I'll let you I won't even lead the witness. What happened to us that led to this circumstance where Something is declared from on high as thus saith the Lord, and there should be no questioning of that beyond that.
Well, that is the $64,000 question. I think it all starts with the fact that, my guess, this is actually a man-made virus, and the people who were put in charge of our response to it had their fingers dirty in terms of funding very dangerous gain-of-function research, giving that research and cooperating with the people in China, our adversary, in case people aren't paying attention here. So they started covering that up immediately. I don't know, to what extent this is all about the money that the mRNA platform can produce for drug companies. Obviously, the fact that vaccines have no liability issues, it's a highly profitable thing for the drug companies, which is why we've just seen an explosion of vaccines on the childhood schedule. So there are many factors here, but I think primarily they were wrong, and nobody wants to admit they were wrong. The death count is way too high when they sabotage early treatments. Now, I'm agnostic. I don't care whether it's hydroxychloroquine, ivermectin, whatever drug cocktail worked. Why weren't we treating patients? Well, we weren't treating patients because Anthony Fauci wanted a vaccine, and he wanted a universal vaccine program, which he was talking to Rick Bright about in October of 2020 at the Milken Institute. So again, they've always wanted a universal vaccine program. In that panel, they said, well, it'll probably take a pandemic before we can really obtain a universal vaccine program. Well, they got their pandemic, and he probably had his fingers dirty producing that pandemic. So again, there's just so much culpability. They don't want to be held accountable for it. And so at this point in time, I think the vast majority of people globally just want to move on. If you got the shot, you really don't want to consider that there's maybe some ticking time bomb in you. You don't really want to know about that. You just really want to just forget the pandemic and move on. And I can guarantee you the people in charge of all this, they definitely want to be moving down the road and just ignoring all the things that they did.
Well, I think I'll tell you, there is zero daylight between your opinions and mine, Senator. Reprehensible as it is, there's no question that this is a big CYA. There are lots of people whose fingerprints are on this pandemic. It was most certainly a man-made virus. And for all the reasons you said, their participation in the gain of function and the amount of monies they stand to make because of the mRNA, the amount of control they were able to exert over the American people and people globally, I think was frankly intoxicating. And the question is really where this is going to go. I'm going to pivot a little bit here, and I'm not asking you to pontificate on the campaign of another, but given what we're hearing very recently, and I think the likelihood that Bobby Kennedy Jr. is actually going to drop out of the race as early as tomorrow, I think there's perhaps an opening for President Trump to pivot a little bit on his stance on this. As far as I'm concerned, there is no, quote, moving forward, as you suggested, without some element of contrition. And I think one of the things that's bothering a lot of people who are otherwise consider themselves to be staunch conservatives is that President Trump has continued, he really has not come out and said anything other than that the approach with regard to the vaccines was beautiful or perfect or good. And I think that's problematic for an awful lot of people. Do you have any thoughts about that, or what he could do or say that might help people to make that leap?
Well, first of all, I have not known Bobby Kennedy as long as you have, but I got to know him during COVID. I met with him a number of times. I think he's just a really good person. I think he's very sincere in terms of, he never really wanted to get involved in the whole vaccine issue, but when he started reading the science brought to him by the moms of vaccinated children, he couldn't turn his back on it. So again, I've got a lot of respect for Bobby. I would love to see him endorse Trump. I'd love to see Trump put him in the position of Secretary of HHS, where Bobby Kennedy can really root out the corruption between big pharma and the federal health agencies. I think that'd be enormously helpful. To answer Dr. Drew's question a little bit fuller, though, in terms of doctors, listen, I've got a great deal of reverence for doctors and for nurses. They saved my daughter as an infant with transition of great arteries with the corrective surgery at 8 months. I have nothing but respect. I think what we witnessed is doctors have relied. First of all, they're educated a certain way. There's certain things they're not taught. they get funneled into specialties. But one of the things they are definitely taught and then reinforced by the way we have very few independent doctors now, they're all pretty much employees of big hospital associations. Everybody's using evidence-based medicine. They're all following protocols, again, which make an awful lot of sense until it doesn't make sense. And so they just follow these protocols. It's a safe way of doing it. They certainly avoid any kind of liability issues if they're trying to practice medicine outside the box. And they don't want to face the reality that maybe by blindly following what Anthony Fauci and the FDA and the CDC pushed in terms of the vaccines, that the vaccines they administered might have killed somebody, might have given them, harmed them physically, permanently for the rest of their lives. Nobody wants to admit that. Members of Congress who cut videos saying, get vaccinated. They don't want to admit that what they recommended their constituents might have harmed some of them. And again, regardless of what percentage were harmed, there are real harms done, but people just don't want to admit it. So the real tragedy here is the people who were vaccine injured, they're still not getting treatment. We're not doing kind of research. And I think one of the great things about toxic shock is we've got doctors in there that are describing the mechanism of exactly how these vaccines could cause all the different types of harms we're seeing. And as a layman, I thought that was extremely beneficial and very helpful.
Well, I agree with you. I think that doctors have not acknowledged their participation in this. Critical thinking was certainly AWOL for the duration of the pandemic. And I think that one of the things that needs to happen is people do need to step up. As I said, contrition is a critical component of this. One of the things that I have had deep conversations along with Drew with Bobby Kennedy about is the cozy relationship, if you will, between big pharma and our once storied medical journals. Fundamentally, right now, the Lancet, JAMA, BMJ, British Medical, these are really just the marketing arm for big pharma. So what is a physician to do if you're relying on, quote, the research, or you think you're going to the source, you're going to the oracle to read the study, to understand, you're really reading propaganda. It cannot continue. Not only does Big Pharma own all the scientific medical journals, so there's not a chance in hell that a study will get published unless it comes to the conclusion that's been bought and paid for by the pharmaceutical company, but they also own the medical schools. The medical schools get tremendous funding from Big Pharma. And therefore, whatever happens there, whatever gets taught there is really, you're feeding pablum to medical students. And it's really got to stop. Otherwise, we cannot have I don't think, a shred of hope of returning integrity to medicine.
Well, Big Pharma also pretty well owns the legacy in the corporate media by pumping billions of dollars into advertising. Let's face it, the social media and the broadcast networks pretty well carried Big Pharma's water through this. They still are. Now, I listen to iHeartRadio all the time, and they're still running ads about, get the latest updates on the COVID vaccine. Even though iHeartRadio is running conservative talk radio, they're certainly questioning the same thing. So, again, it is a total corruption. That's why I dubbed this group the COVID cartel, the Biden administration, who forced these vaccines with mandates. The federal health agencies who've been captured by Big Pharma, the corporate media and big tech companies that have also been captured by big pharmaceutical companies. Again, that's the COVID cartel.
Senator,
again, they are a powerful group. The body count's way too high. They're never going to admit they're wrong, and they got the power to make it very difficult to prove them wrong.
And I do not want to propose something outlandish, but when I the COVID cartel is well established. It exists. It just does. Right. The extent to which it's distorting things needs to be teased out. But my concern is, when I see Elon Musk talking about mind viruses, that idea resonates with me. And I think about how we have big food and how they own the media and the politicians and big pharma, and then how foreign adversaries own academic institutions. You use the word corrupt. To me, those are just three massive corruptions. and help understand why I feel like I'm Alice in freaking Wonderland all the time. But what can we do about this magnitude of corruption that has been underway? They've been doing, listen, when big tobacco moved to big food and big pharma moved, the way it did to advertising, and then our adversaries bought all the chairmanships at the various institutions across the country. This didn't happen yesterday. This has probably been going on for 20 years. What do we do to fight this back? And do you agree with this construct I'm painting?
I do, and I think the only solution here is exposing the truth. And, of all the tragedies that resulted from COVID, the one bright spot is it has opened an awful lot of people's eyes. People in the past who just blindly followed the CDC, FDA, because, these are people of integrity, and why should we ever doubt them? Or follow the medical journals, whatever. All of a sudden they realize, there's a real problem here. There is corruption. Not to plug a competitor's podcast here, but Tucker had a very interesting interview with Dr. Casey Means and her brother Callie. I spoke to them this morning.
Yeah.
But she's laying out me. She just completely walked out of medicine. She was at the pinnacle of it, and she just realized we've so specialized. And again, that makes sense. I'm not criticizing that at all. But we have so specialized medicine. And again, I think you have to in order to really treat some of these things, but we've lost sight of the forest for the trees. And so we just, there's just not value. There's not the compensation for the general practitioner. And we're not using science to really take a look at, what is causing all this? And from my standpoint, set the vaccines aside. What I'm hoping President Trump and Bobby Kennedy come together on is look at chronic illness. Bobby Kennedy's been talking about it a long time. I think President Trump definitely understands it. I know he's concerned about some of the childhood vaccines. I had a conversation with him about somebody that worked for him whose child he believed was injured by a vaccine. So again, you have to have an open mind, and the abuse during COVID has opened up millions of people's eyes and their minds. And I think that gives us our best opportunity here.
I agree with you on that. I think
Caleb, could you put up I'm sorry, Kelly, I'm just going to get Caleb to do this. Put up the some sort of way of noting where we interviewed Callie Means so people can go to that interview if they want to see it. And just pile on what Senator Johnson was saying. Yes. Her brother was a food lobbyist. And so he brings that story to bear. I know her very well. She was not just an excellent physician. She was at the absolute top of the academic heat at Stanford as an ENT surgeon and let it all go to try to save people from chronic illness. My aging brain has been under the influence of bad food for a long time. So the other thing I want to say has escaped me.
You were ahead of the curve.
It's all right. It's okay.
That's great.
The interview with her was excellent. I have no problem supporting everybody who's on the side of good right now. I don't care. We all need to choose your poison. Get the information however you get it, because you're absolutely right that it certainly opened my eyes. I was a robot as it pertained to following along from the authorities dictating from on high. I was the one during COVID that kept saying, listen to Dr. Fauci, let him guide you. He was so good during the AIDS pandemic. That's the one thing I really, really got wrong. And of course, nobody remembers that part. They remember me trying to calm everybody down. But anyway, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Kelly.
No, what I was going to say is truly, I think that COVID did expose for a lot of people the corruption and the fact that these were not mistakes my government made, but lies my government told me, and that it's been going on for a long time. I've been talking about it and exposing the idea that we don't have a healthcare system in the United States at all. What we have is a disease care system. We have a system that creates disease, and then we come up with ways to treat it. And it's been going on for decades. COVID brought that, I think, to a head, and maybe that's what had to happen for it to be so egregious, to be so overwhelming, where just the average person who doesn't have a background in science says, wait a minute, this is insanity. Our system is actually making it worse. The cure is worse than the disease. And so I think that if anything good came out of COVID, it's perhaps the fact that we have awakened the beast. People have seen the soft and corrupt underbelly of this, and that they are really not willing to take it anymore. So I'm hoping that something will happen. What is the last question I'll ask on this particular topic, senators? From your purview, where you sit in Washington, what's happening around you? What are your fellow, even Republicans, conservatives in Congress, in the Senate? What are people saying? Are people getting it, or do they just want to sweep it under the rug?
No, I think the majority of members of Congress are like the majority of the public, majority of the medical establishment. They just want to forget what happened and move on. Don't blame us. But I do want to speak. I don't want to overstate the corruption. There's no doubt corruption of big pharma, and there are corrupt individuals. But again, I think it's a system that has been developed, and there's a lot of rationale for it having developed the way it is. And because we haven't really taken a look at the root cause. I come from manufacturing, and you can have a motor making a lot of noise, and you just keep adding more oil if it's leaking, and that's the problem. But that's not fixing the root cause, and that's what we're not doing in medicine. We're not analyzing and understanding the root cause. And according to Dr. Means, it really starts with all the pesticides, all the chemicals. I think Bobby Kennedy's on the same page. I come from the position that, yeah, we know a lot in medicine. I'm amazed at how much we know. And obviously, I'm the recipient and a beneficiary of modern medicine with my daughter. But I will still say, and this is what I think I've learned during COVID and my interaction with doctors, is what we don't know vastly exceeds what we do know. I had my staff pull out a clip. I made the comment because I wasn't getting vaccinated. Just wasn't going to do it. And I said, well, look, I've already had COVID. So I've got natural immunity. Why would it be so arrogant to think that something that man created would be better than our God-given natural immunity? I was just savaged in the media for saying what I thought is obvious. Again, I don't understand all these things. I read this and most of the stuff goes over my head, but the marvel of the human body, and I think that's what I really enjoy listening to Dr. Means, is she's just describing this. And when you start getting into the exquisite detail of each cell and what it does, first of all, I don't know how you can be an atheist. There's design here, okay? And it's a marvelous design, and it does marvelous things. And I got to go with the theory that we're clogging it up. We're doing something, and exactly what that is, again, I don't know. I'm not sure anybody fully knows, but that's where we ought to be focusing our attention. Let's get to the root cause of these things. Rather than treating symptoms all the time, treat the root cause and produce health as opposed to try and cure a symptom.
Sure. All right, Drew, if it's okay with you, I'm going to change directions here a little bit. I don't know if we're coming up to a break or
Kelly.
not.
Yeah, why don't you sort of telegraph what you want to do on the other side, if that's okay? And
sure,
Senator Johnson, do you have another 15 or so minutes to donate to us? You've been so
absolutely.
kind so
One
far.
thing about U.S. senators, we like to talk.
Terrific.
Well, and by the way, I'm noticing your certitude on this topic. You used to be a little circumspect about this topic when we would interview you. Now you are straight ahead with it, which I love, and it's appropriate. So I thank you for that, and thank you for your continued support of these topics. But Kelly, telegraph what you want to do, and we'll take a little break.
Well, although I've been totally immersed for the past 4+ years in COVID, it's all COVID all the time. My area of expertise is actually mass casualty and medical preparedness for big events, including active shooter events. And I've taught an active shooter preparedness and response course for many years. I'd like to pick your brain insofar as you are able to talk about any of it with regard to the ongoing investigation about the recent assassination attempt against former President Trump and where that stands. I've got lots of, suffice to say, I've got lots of questions because as somebody who had done hundreds of site security assessments and site threat assessments myself personally, I've got lots of questions. So I'm hoping we can talk about that a bit.
Agreed?
Absolutely. Happy to.
Want to get it? All right. Beautiful. All right. Be right back after this. Of course, I'm a fan of the healthy aging supplement True Niagen. I've been taking it almost for a decade myself. This supplement boosts NAD, which your cells need to survive properly metabolically, and it goes down as we age. It does so with a nutrient called nicotinamide riboside, or NR, specifically patented form of NR called Niagen. It's the most efficient and trusted NAD booster. NAD can also play a role in reproductive health. Boosting NAD is recommended with prenatal vitamins for women over 30 looking to start a family. Here's Dr. Amy, also known as the Egg Whisperer, a highly influential specialist in this area.
That was when I said, this is amazing. I need every single person going through fertility to take it. I not only take it myself, my patients have shared stories. They took it and then they got pregnant naturally. And that's really my goal, is I want people to empower themselves with the tools so that they can get pregnant without my help.
True Niagen is an amazing NAD booster. You're going to want to add it to your reproductive health arsenal. And of course, it's in our family of Dr. Drew sponsors. Go to drdrew.com/True Niagen for 20% off your order. That is drdew.com/True Niagen. Enter Dr. Drew at checkout for 20% off. I'm excited to bring you a new product, a new supplement, Fatty. I take it. I make Susan take it. My whole family takes it. This comes out of, believe it or not, dolphin research. The Navy maintains a fleet of dolphins. And a brilliant veterinarian recognized that these dolphins sometimes developed a syndrome identical to our Alzheimer's disease. Those dolphins were deficient in a particular fatty acid. She replaced the fatty acid, and they didn't get the Alzheimer's. Humans have the same issue, and we are more deficient in this particular fatty acid than ever before. And a simple replacement of this fatty acid called C15 will help us prevent these syndromes. It's published in a recent journal called Metabolites. It's a new nutritional C15, pentadecanoic acid it's called. The deficiency that we are developing for C15 creates something called the cellular fragility syndrome. This is the first nutritional deficiency syndrome to be discovered in 75 years and may be affecting us in many ways, and as many as 1 in 3 of us. This is an important breakthrough. Take advantage of it. Go to fatty15.com/Dr. Drew to receive 15% off a 90-day starter kit subscription, or use code Dr. Drew at checkout for that 15% off, or just go to our website, drdrew.com/fatty15. Many of us have not gotten over COVID. I'm not talking about the virus itself, but the response. We were flabbergasted by what the government could do to us. There is no telling what they might pull next time, and it's looking more like there will be a next time. So we all have to be what I call rationally ready. That's where the wellness company comes in. TWC is about access to physicians via telehealth, access to potentially life-saving medication. Years ago, having access to medication and telehealth might have seemed crazy, but now it seems crazy not to. Now, with claims that gain-of-function research have been done on the bird flu, I urge everyone to take control of their healthcare with the help of the wellness company. Go to drdrew.com/TWC for 10% off all their products, including the 4 medical kits, each of which has a different purpose. And we've added Tamiflu to one of them in case the bird flu does become a problem for humans. Be rationally ready. drdrew.com/TWC for 10% off.
Dr. Drew said the best way to quit drinking is by going cold turkey, and he's a doctor, so why would you question doctors?
Dr. Drew called me unfixable.
We are back with Dr. Kelly Victory and Senator Ron Johnson. I was just thinking the wellness company, Kelly, who's also on the medical board with me there, is another positive outcome. It was actually Kelly's quote that this would have seemed crazy before, and now it's crazy not to be prepared the way we're helping people do with the wellness company.
There's great folks there. It's everybody, all the names you know, Peter McCullough and Harvey Reich and Jim Thorpe and Dr. Drew and myself, and a great group of people who are really motivated, I guess is the best way to say it, to return integrity to medicine. Medicine took a real hit. My profession, our profession, really took it on the chin during this, and for some good reason, because an awful lot of our colleagues, let's face it, none of this could have happened were it not for the complicity of the average doctor, and that's a crime. But we are really hoping to convince people that there are still doctors out there who are more interested in their patients than in profits. Insofar as we could return some semblance of integrity to medicine, that's what we're hoping to do. So back to what I was leading into prior to the break there. As I said, I have a long history in disaster preparedness and response, and have been involved in teaching and training both law enforcement and civilians how to prepare for and respond to potential shooting events. There are just a myriad things about the assassination attempt that happened against President Trump that just don't smell right to me. And I don't believe that the story that we've been told to date is the correct one. It's everything from how they could have possibly not secured that rooftop where the shooter supposedly fired at President Trump, to how they've handled the body of the shooter, why we've heard nothing about that. And an awful lot of evidence that clearly has been collected has not been revealed to the public. So tell me as much as you can, Senator, if you would, lead us through where the investigation stands at this point.
Well, first of all, if you wanted to do an investigation that everybody would be suspicious of and would drive conspiracy theories, you'd do exactly what the FBI, the Secret Service, and the Department of Justice is doing right now. The only thing we really know about what happened on July 13th is coming from local law enforcement. First of all, because they're used to telling the public what happens after a tragedy. They do briefings sometimes multiple times a day after something happens in their community. So they're used to being transparent and accountable. Our federal law enforcement, they are the law, and so they hold themselves above the law. They don't believe they should be subject to scrutiny or accountability. So that's a big problem. For example, when Acting Director Rowe did his press conference, he never mentioned that a local law enforcement took the first shot at Crooks, even though that had been reported in the Washington Post. Our investigators talking to local law enforcement knew that as well. Why wouldn't he mention that? I was literally flabbergasted when I heard that the FBI has released the body to be cremated before anybody has seen an autopsy report. Again, I'm not a doctor, but I want to make sure that there's a full spectrum toxicology report. Were SSRIs being administered? I mean, that'd be certainly one of my questions about, and I'm sure there's a host of questions that doctors would actually want to ask. For example, was he hit prior to the shot that took him out to his head? So again, we're getting what information we know is from local law enforcement. The feds are, zipping their lips. I am part of a bipartisan investigation with our chairman of Homeland Security. I'm ranking member on the subcommittee, the Preparedness subcommittee. So we've got the four of us, 2 chairmen, 2 ranking members. But the people they're offering us up that we're investigating, good people, appreciate talking to them, but they're not the ones that can really answer the questions. And that's on purpose. So unfortunately, I think our congressional investigation is going to morph more into an investigation of their investigation as opposed to a really investigation in terms of what happened. And let's face it, we don't have the investigatory capabilities as the FBI. We just simply don't. I mean, we don't have the capacity to interview as many people as they've already interviewed, to do the forensics, to do the biological testing. We need to rely on federal law enforcement to do that, but they need to be transparent, and they're being completely opaque.
Yeah, well, some of the explanations that they have given, I mean, Kimberly Cheadle, the now former head of the Secret Service, her explanation that they did not have agents on the roof because it was sloped. I mean, truly, this is just preposterous. And everybody who heard it has to know that, whether you have a background in this or not. So I think the explanations they have given don't make sense. The idea that we don't even know that the supposed shooter had gunpowder residue or any evidence that he actually ever shot that weapon. I can tell you based on where it was in the photos that I saw on the roof, it doesn't make sense. He supposedly shot the president and then was taken out by a counter sniper. Well, when that happens, I do a fair amount of shooting myself. I can tell you when something gets shot, the idea that he threw his weapon then 7 feet away after he was shot in the head, it doesn't make sense. These things do not comport. And I'm very interested in whether there is a committee in Congress that is actually looking and exposing and saying, no, we do not accept this explanation. Guess again, still your turn. We need something better.
Well, the House that has, a Republican speaker, Republican majority, the speaker has appointed a task force, and I think they'll do a serious job of trying to investigate this. I mean, I joined this bipartisan investigation because I don't have subpoena power. I can't compel testimony. So I was hoping, Chairman Peters and Chairman Blumenthal would utilize their subpoena power and force the federal agencies to cough up the witnesses and turn over documents. Again, we're getting some witnesses coming forward. We've done some transcribed interviews, but it's going at a snail's pace. And the people we're interviewing just literally can't. They're not knowledgeable of the real issues here. We can't really get to the heart of the problem here and ask the kind of questions to get the answers we really need. So again, federal agencies, I would say, are basically being completely uncooperative. But we'll see what kind of progress the House makes. But again, we don't have the investigatory capability. They've cleaned up the scene. What do we have left? So we'll end up having to investigate their investigation, similar to the Warren Commission, right?
Of all of the active shooter or shooting events in which I've been involved, dozens and dozens of them, I have never been seen one where there has been zero information released about the shooter's social media platforms, things, what were they involved in, those sorts of things, interviews with parents, with neighbors, information. What have you learned about the supposed shooter Crooks in these past weeks that would lead you to believe or give you any insight into his potential motivation?
Well, it's interesting. The Heritage Foundation did a search right away in terms of his cell phone ID. And, I asked the FBI about that. The FBI briefer just rolled his eyes. Okay. So you're discounting that. We're hearing reports, I don't know if they're true or not, but he had fairly encrypted accounts in all kinds of different countries. Well, that's a little odd. That's not normal. So again, by being so opaque, they're just driving suspicion. They're driving conspiracy theories. And you have to wonder why. I mean, that's the first thing. When we were briefed the Wednesday after the shooting by FBI Director Wray and Cheadle, the big point they both made is we want to get the truth out there because we can't let conspiracy theories run wild. Okay, get the truth out. Tell us something. But they're doing the exact opposite. So again, it's baffling to me. It certainly raises my antenna. It makes me unbelievably suspicious.
Yeah, and I think the thing, and then I'm going to change direction, but I think the thing that they underestimated, these different agencies, FBI, CIA, Secret Service, whoever else, I think they underestimated that unlike 1963, everybody and their brother has a cell phone, has a recording device, and we've got a lot more than the Zapruder film to base our suspicions upon. And I think I can't even call them conspiracy theories. I think they are legit, factual, fact-based theories. And I don't see them being able to ultimately sweep this one under the rug as they've done in the past. And so thank you for your work on it.
Well, the one video taken remarkably enough by the guy who got shot twice shows Crooks moving across the roof 3 minutes before he opened fire. Mm-hmm. We know that the Secret Service sniper team did receive word 26 minutes before. They had a picture and they knew he was somewhere in the AGI building. Are they not watching that roof? Again, we haven't been able to talk to those sniper teams to determine what did you see? Where were you paying attention to? Why didn't you see him? This video, the guy who got shot actually took a video. That video camera could see him. Why wouldn't somebody in the Secret Service who are trying to protect the event? Why weren't you looking, even though you knew there was somebody suspicious walking around the AGI building? And the basic questions aren't being answered.
What a remarkable coincidence that this Crooks kid was featured in a BlackRock commercial filmed at his high school in 2023. Just kind of crazy coincidence that of all the people who would have been in a BlackRock commercial. I just find it fascinating. Tinfoil hat stuff for sure.
Maybe that's why they're not.
Kelly, I love you.
Yeah, crazy. Well, now another thing I want to ask you about, and again, we're going to turn, off to the other way. I'd like to hear my areas of expertise. We've pretty much just exhausted COVID and mass casualty active shooter scenes. I am not an economist, but I do know my history. And I'm certainly aware that everywhere in the world, historically, that price controls have been put into place, a la Maduro down in Venezuela, have really fallen apart. It is not a good economic policy. Love to hear what you're thinking right now as you listen to the DNC and listen to Kamala Harris and her ideas as they are for policy, economic and otherwise, if she were to get into the Oval Office.
I keep thinking of George Orwell's 1984. Where the party's theme was war is peace, freedom is slavery, ignorance is strength. I guess in terms of the Democratic Party, I would say they would say that big government is freedom. No, it's not. I mean, big government is the exact opposite of freedom. And from their standpoint, they want the American public to be largely ignorant because that gives them power. That strengthens their hands. So what I see is the Democrat Party, all those speakers lying, gaslighting. They're not addressing the issues that face Americans today. It's kind of like the last 3.5 years didn't even happen. Somebody caused all this, and now we're going to fix it. They're the ones that voted for the massive deficit in spending that sparked 40-year high inflation. Now they got a plan to bring prices down. I'm sorry, that damage has already been done. They're the ones that opened up the border. I mean, the border was largely closed. People were coming in. We were setting it back under Title 42. There weren't many people being let into this country, and yet Joe Biden says, it's as low as level as it was when Trump came into office. Well, I mean, encounters were rising when he left office because Democrats were saying they're going to end deportations and give free health care. So that incentivized people from the low point in April of 2020. But again, we had Title 42 returning all those people that we were encountering. Biden blew the border open. So again, it's just galling to listen to the lies, to the gaslighting, just the denial of reality. I'm hoping that in the end the truth will prevail here. But the Democrats do that. They do lie. They do gaslight because they can pretty well count on the media carrying the water for them and covering up for them. They'll never hold them accountable. They're not going to subject these policies to scrutiny. Instead, what you get out of Kamala Harris is, she's got a great plan now to freeze out the prices like it's going to work. No, it's always failed. It can't work.
Right.
It reduces supply. In the end, it dramatically increases prices.
Yeah, well, what's remarkable is, as you said, the mainstream media cover for her. She's out there on the stump talking about all of these things that are going to be her top priority. Day one, when she's elected, she's going to do this. And nobody reminds her, you are elected. You're in office. You're day 900 and something on the job here. And if you believe in any of the things you're saying, why aren't you doing them right now?
Again, and you caused the problem.
Right.
Literally, she's, hey, we're the arsonists, elect us to put out the fire that we started. And that's by and large what they're asking the American public to do. I hope Americans aren't that stupid.
No, exactly. My favorite meme on today on Twitter is the one where it says, for the last 3 years, they've been saying the economy is great under Biden. And then the last 3 weeks, it's Kamala's going to fix the economy. Well, I thought it was great. I thought it was booming. I thought it was fantastic. What are you going to fix? It's just insanity. But where do you see things going? She picked somebody who I think, from my perspective, is almost worse than she is. Tim Walz is absolutely, what he's done in Minnesota has been horrific. He instituted what was fundamentally a brown shirt line during COVID to rat out your neighbor, a tip line where you could call in and rat out your neighbor if he had, more than the allotted number of cars in front of his house at, the 4th of July barbecue, or if somebody was doing something that was, forbidden. He's been horrible on, human rights and personal liberties. What do you think, why do you think they made that pick? What do you think motivated that?
It baffled me. I mean, it was just an in-your-face selection. Kamala Harris is far left. She picked somebody who might even be further left.
Right.
Somebody who has strong ties to China, gets married on the anniversary of Tiananmen Square for some strange reason. His entire biography is by and large a lie. And they continue to perpetuate that lie. Because again, they know the media won't call him on it. He was never a command master sergeant. He bugged out.
Right.
He was AWOL. He's part of the Guard. And, God bless people in the Guard, but the Guard is there. They do training. They get paid so that when the nation needs them, they answer the call and they get, they go to war. When he got called to go to war, he said, I think I'll run for Congress instead. And just by and large deserted his unit, left all those people under his command in a lurch. I mean, that's the reality of it. But the media will not tell the truth. He said he's this wonderful coach guy, right? He's really not. Apparently, he's an unpaid volunteer assistant defense coach. Again, so they're just creating this image. They're allowing Kamala Harris to run without doing interviews, never getting one vote whatsoever, not providing any scrutiny, not having to explain. Well, tell us why your price controls will actually work. Tell us why your $2 trillion additional deficit spending won't spark more high inflation. Explain these things. They're not asking her to explain herself, and that's what I've been predicting. I've been for well over a year thinking that Biden would not be their nominee. I didn't know who they're going to slide in there, but I predicted anybody they would put in that position, they're going to put on a pedestal and pretty well declare this is the new Messiah. And even though I was predicting that, I'm actually amazed at how much the media is doing just that. And they're getting away with it.
Yeah, I'm amazed by it as well. And I will tell you, I think, as I said, Tim Walz, I think, is further to the left, believe it or not, than Kamala Harris. And by an order of magnitude, I think the reason they didn't pick Shapiro from Pennsylvania, and I find it just repugnant, is that because they're feeding into the anti-Semitic component that's going on right now nationally, and because they don't want to risk losing the vote in Michigan. And I think that's really, I'd be interested in what you feel in Congress. Again, I've never in my lifetime experienced anti-Semitism to the level that it exists today. I think we really are in a very, very dangerous place in our country with regard to division along those lines.
One thing that's not pointed out is those protesters, the pro-Hamas protesters down in Chicago right now, they're not going to be voting for Donald Trump. The BLM protesters, Antifa, they're not going to vote for Donald Trump. That's part of the Democrats' identity politic coalition. They'll be voting for Kamala Harris. They may be protesting her now to make a point, but they will be voting for Kamala Harris and Tim Walz. So I'm hoping anybody who is thinking about supporting Kamala Harris and Tim Walz is you're going to be voting with those protesters, the ones that produced close to 600 riots in the summer of 2020. 2,000 law enforcement officials injured, a couple billion dollars worth of damage, a couple dozen people killed, a couple of those in Kenosha, Wisconsin. These are the people that are valued coalition members of the radical left, which is the Democrat Party. That's just the reality. So my guess is those people are going to vote, and they're not going to vote for Trump. They're going to vote for Kamala Harris.
Right. Drew, let me let you back in
Senator
here.
Johnson. Yeah. I was going to say, he's been very generous with his time. Kelly, you and I are going to take some questions from the Restream and the Rumble Rants, but I want to give Senator Johnson a chance to kind of wrap up and get on with the business at hand that we're hoping he will continue to do aggressively. Are there last thoughts before we wrap?
Obviously, that discussion went down the partisan path, but I really want to get back on the nonpartisan path. Mm-hmm. And that's what I thought was pretty interesting about the doctors that attended and presented at my events. Most of them were Democrats.
Right.
Just talking to Dr. Means today, kind of the same thing is the group of people that are kind of supporting her research. A lot of them are Democrats. There's nothing partisan about this. Right. And that's an issue that I would love to really get involved in expose the truth, start driving the analysis, the research toward the root cause. Why are we so unhealthy? Why have we gone from, as Bobby Kennedy says, 6% chronic illness in children to now 60%? We need to get to the bottom of that. And again, there's all kinds of theories. I mean, there's all kinds of different things. I sometimes joke with my wife because she's buying all the supplements, so you don't really have to eat. I mean, there's probably enough calories in all those supplements. But people we need to know, and nobody really does know.
Right.
A lot of the stuff makes sense. There's theories of it, but we need the research, and that should be done in a completely nonpartisan basis. But
100%.
That is what we want our federal health agencies to do. They're not doing that. They are at the beck and call. And that is, to me, that's what first has to be cleaned up. We have to end the corruption, the capture of big pharma with these federal health agencies and the media. So I would eliminate, and I'm the private sector guy, I would eliminate all advertising on media and social media by big pharma. It should just be outlawed, okay? Because it has such a harmful impact. And we need to completely sever the ties, the conflicts between our federal health agencies. We probably have to completely rebuild the federal health agencies. We probably have to replace virtually everybody at the top. And I don't know about people underneath, but there's got to be a very cleaning of the house of our federal health agencies. And that's what I would hope Bobby Kennedy would do as HHS Secretary. I'm crossing my fingers. I'm praying that's what happens in what's announced tomorrow.
From your lips to God's ears, Senator. And I agree that with regard to pharmaceutical advertising, there's a darn good reason there are only two countries in the world, the United States and New Zealand being the other, that allow pharmaceutical advertising on television and social media. It's absolutely dangerous. It leads you down a very bad path. So thank you. Bless you for your work and for giving us your time. Please promise you'll come back when you can.
We shouldn't let big ag off the hook either, because that's probably the problem as well. So we've got to. It's not just big pharma; it's also big ag. What's happened
100%
in terms of agriculture and our food processing.
100%.
I completely agree, and I hope you'll, if we can, I know I speak on behalf of Dr. Victory and myself. Just if there's anything we can do to support you, please call on us.
Please.
Again, I appreciate the opportunity, and I'll be calling.
Terrific.
All right, good.
Thank you.
We're all in. Thank you, Senator Ron Johnson. Everybody. You again his X profile so you can follow it. It is Sen Ron Johnson. That is his government official X, and his personal is Ron Johnson WI. So Kelly, back to a couple things. Back to Bobby Kennedy. I spoke to Nicole Shanahan yesterday, and she said tomorrow at 11 a.m. Pacific time, it will be one of the biggest announcements in the history of American elections. Yeah. And she stood by that statement. So I'm anxious to hear what he has to say. She doesn't really know what he's going to say yet, and a lot of speculation. But I don't see that either of them getting behind the Democratic Party.
No, I would be shocked if that was the case. I can't say I have the specifics on it, but my guess is that he is going to suspend, I think is the proper term, his candidacy, and I am hopeful that he comes out with a full-blown endorsement of President Trump. I think if they were to join forces, not something, wishy-washy, not something that leaves any room for really interpretation. I am hopeful that he will come out with a staunch endorsement that will make it very clear, look, we don't agree on everything. We don't agree with, and Bobby has said this many, many times publicly, and he and I have had this conversation. Nobody agrees with anybody on everything. The question is, are you directionally aligned? Do you actually believe that the country should go a certain direction overall? And you can sort out that. So I'm hoping that he will come out, give a staunch endorsement, and join forces. It will be the shot across the bow to the other side that the United States, we are not going down. You are not going to fundamentally change the fabric of this country. We are not giving up our democracy. we're done with it. And I think they'd be very powerful together. Certainly, Bobby's got the gravitas to pull it off, and in any number of cabinet roles, I think he could play. And I don't have any idea what they may or may not have. HHS. I mean, I've heard Attorney General. There are lots of things I've heard.
I've heard that too.
I'd like to see him do something if he was interested on the healthcare side, because he certainly has great passion for that. And whether or not you agree with every one of his policy positions, and I don't, I can say that he is a stunningly good human being. And that means a lot in my book.
Director of CIA.
Yeah, me too. I've been around him quite a bit.
I like director of CIA.
What's that, Bob? Oh, what's that, Caleb?
I want a director of CIA.
Director.
I want him to just go in there and just start throwing secrets out the window. Like, here you go. Done keeping it from you guys.
It'd be interesting.
There you go.
Yeah, I want to. By the way, on the Restream and on the Rumble Rants, I'm watching you guys. If you have questions for Dr. Victory or myself, and Caleb's watching it too, you'll put them up. If you have anything you want to ask us, this is your chance. That's why we're staying behind here right now. But I want to call back on two things you said, Kelly, before I ask your opinion. One was you mentioned the brown shirt line, and I've said it constantly that people who reported or hassled people for mask wearing or for vaccine, if you were the person that was even moderately aggressive with your mandates, let's say you were a flight attendant or something, whatever it is, if you were somebody who really took that seriously, you need to examine your soul, because you would be the prison guard. Everybody says, oh, if Germany, if a Nazi thing again, I'd be an objector. No, you wouldn't. You'd be scared, because you read about Germans in that time. They were frightened, and they were propagandized, and they did exactly what you did during COVID. And believe me, they could make you do it again unless you wake up to what they did to you, number one. Number two, Kelly, I don't know if you're aware that the television advertising campaign, I've heard this secondhand, so I don't know if this is apocryphal or not, but that the intent of Pharma is not to add, like I always, when I look at these ads, I'm like, these obscure skin diseases and these tumor necrosis factor inhibitors. I mean, how much of those are they really selling? They must be very expensive. And how much are they actually selling of? When I asked that question of someone in the know, they said, oh, no. The pharmacy companies don't want to market the drug directly to patients so much as control the media. They want the media to be their customer, so they have control. And that I found was a chilling observation.
Oh, 100%. How many people out there, Drew, do you really think have thyroid eye disease? Okay, I mean, it is a thing, okay, but not enough to do a 45-second, television, advertisement segment on prime time. You know what that costs.
Yes.
So the reason they do that is, as you said, it's simply they are buying time, they are paying for it with the station, with the media outlet, because then they own them. So when they do want the media to push something, for example, an mRNA COVID shot, they have them buy the what. They control them.
Muscle.
And nobody,
muscle, the propaganda.
They have the muscle. And so that is why you see all of these ridiculous commercials for something for which, there are 8 people in the country that have that disease. But it's all about owning the, the stations when they need them.
If you want to read about how, I read a book recently, I just sent it to my daughter, In the Garden of the Beast by Eric Larson. He's the guy that wrote Devil in the White City. And so it's the devolution of the German situation in 1931 to say 35 through the eyes of the American ambassador in Berlin and his family. And it is a stunning, it was familiar. It was so familiar that I was almost nauseated. Of course, it went, the violence was the thing that was over the top, and the amount of violence was, they perpetrated on one another. It was extraordinary. And that, I think, is the aftermath of World War I on a highly traumatized population. But other than that, it was very, very, very familiar, which I found shocking.
Well, yeah, well, as you were just alluding, and I've said it many, many times, if you want to know how you would have behaved during Nazi Germany, simply look at what you did during COVID. Because there are two things there. There are two motivators. There's one, there are the people who are just fearful and who don't have a backbone and cannot, and
That's
just,
right.
will do whatever they need to do to get along. And then there's the, libido dominandi, the overwhelming compunction of people to control those around them. And if they get any little bit of power, to exert that power. You see it every day if you travel at all. You see your average TSA agent, your average, whatever, somebody at the school board who has the ability to make policy and to control others. So, but if you want to know how you would have behaved during that horrific time in our nation's history, look at what you did during COVID. If you were that Karen, yelling at people in the grocery store to stay 6 feet away or put their mask over their nose, you would have been that person. And I agree with you, Drew. You need to do some real soul searching about, where
I would say, and I would welcome those folks. I would say, good for you. Congratulations. You've woken up and you're apologizing and you're reckoning with this. That's what needs to happen. Oh, by the way, I got some comments here. Kelly was the warrior during the pandemic, rational reflections. Dr. Victory, do you now question all vaccines and new therapeutics because of the last 4 years? I question whether the earth is round. It's like Joe Rogan says. So I was not open to any of these things before, and now I'm open to everything. So I'm kidding, of course, but it's how much I've become a skeptic. It's wild.
Well, no, I've been very open about it. This COVID for me ended up being a huge existential crisis for that exact reason. And I've been out and open about it prior to from COVID from day one. Yes, I smelled a rat from day one and was very vocal about it. But prior to COVID, I was considered by many to be a vaccine zealot. I had spoken and written prolifically about it. I said that the people in Marin County who aren't vaccinating their kids for chickenpox, they're the problem. And and I've been out there and been very contrite and said I was wrong. Clearly, they may not have known the science exactly behind why they weren't getting their kids vaccinated. They might not have understood how bad the research was, but they were onto something. They knew something deep down, in their gut, and it led them in the right way. And so, yes, I've questioned everything from not only vaccines, and the insanity of how lousy the research is, Drew, and that we just are flogging the immune system with vaccine after vaccine after vaccine. But it's beyond that. It's statins. What are we doing with statin drugs? Do we need, what's the truth about cholesterol? What's the truth about high blood pressure? It used to be back, when I was first training, the acceptable upper limit for blood pressure was 100 plus your age. So if you were a 60-year-old person, 160, 160 over something was totally fine. Then all of a sudden it was 140, then 120. Now it needs to be a 110. Now they're not. I mean, what's reality? What's actually the science, and what's driven by big pharma and propaganda? So to the answer to that person's question, yes, I question everything, and I've been going back to the sources as much as I can to sort out what research, quote unquote, actually is legit and what isn't.
Yeah, I would refer everyone to Broken Science with Emily Kaplan, who's a brilliant woman who is looking at all these things, and she comes from an actual thinking background, and she's not saying things are all good or all bad. She's saying the science is flawed in certain respects. And we need to really examine this very, very carefully. It's like what Dr. Freeman was saying to us. I'm not saying the conclusions are necessarily wrong. I'm saying that we're not doing what we're supposed to do. And I have a feeling there's some Galileos flying around these days, and we're missing them because we're so deep in our perception of things. And so here we go. So be that as it may, Kelly, great to see you. Thank you for being here. Anything else you want people to do besides get toxic shot?
No, I think that's great. Keep your eyes open. I've got my bingo card up to date. It includes not only COVID and influenza and RSV as we go into the fall, but remember there's Zika virus and Ebola and bird flu, both H5N1 and H7N9.
Mpox,
we got both of those.
Mpox.
And now the new one, this sloth virus. I mean, it is insanity. People, use your common judgment, learn something from the past 4 years. We cannot and should not try to vaccinate our way to good health, and don't be fearful of every new virus that comes down the pike. Your immune system will do you right if you take care of it.
I saw a long thread of influenza A occurring early, and I thought, why would anyone except you or me be interested in this? They should not be looking at this stuff. It's not going to help them. Okay, let's see. Is there any last minute stuff? I had something else I was thinking I wanted to point out. Follow Kelly at Dr. Kelly Victory, Dr. Kelly Victory. And of course, you can see her representing the wellness company, much like myself. And I guess that's it. I'm gonna remember what it is I wanted to bring up before I let you go. I'm gonna be kicking myself, but good to see you as always, and thank you for helping out with Ron Johnson. Go ahead.
As I say, September is National Disaster Preparedness Month. The topic near and dear to my heart. So I'm going to be making, on behalf of the wellness company, I'll be doing a weekly video for how you can prepare for yourself and your family. Again, it's what you and I preach all the time, Drew. It's rational readiness. Yeah. I'm not talking about prepping. I'm not talking about stockpiling baked beans and toilet paper. I am talking about rational, what is reasonable to do and what you really should be doing in preparation in case, God forbid, there is a disaster of some sort. And so I'm going to talk about everything from food and water supplies, medical supplies, how to build a go bag or a bug out bag, the kinds of things you should have pulled together in case you need to evacuate.
Fantastic. All right. Well, thank you all for being here. Thank you, Dr. Kelly Victory. Thank you to Senator Ron Johnson. Don't forget Susan's show this afternoon at 3 o'clock. Amanda McCants, if you're a fan of hers like I am, you will enjoy her. Caleb, have you checked her stuff out yet on Instagram or TikTok?
My wife had already sent some of those to me. I'm like, I know who this is. She's going to be so funny tonight. That's going to be hilarious.
Yeah, and Susan nailed it. Because I kept sending them to Susan, and she goes, Amanda McCants, she makes fun of people like me. Yes, that's it. Yeah, that's it. That is absolutely it. Okay, and we all, and as far as tomorrow goes, keep your eyes peeled and your ears to the ground as it pertains to what Bobby Kennedy has in store for us and Nicole Shanahan. And I have a feeling Nicole Shanahan will be around for a long time, helping out with important causes. So I look forward to whatever it is she intends to do in the future. And again, next week we are a little short. We have to travel. We will be doing a show on Thursday from Boca Raton, Florida. Viva Fry will join us in studio at that point, and then we return to our normal schedule on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday of the first week of September. So until then, we'll see you next time. Ask Dr. Drew is produced by Caleb Nation and Susan Pinsky. As a reminder, the discussions here are not a substitute for medical care, diagnosis, or treatment. This show is intended for educational and informational purposes only. I am a licensed physician, but I am not a replacement for your personal doctor, and I am not practicing medicine here. Always remember that our understanding of medicine and science is constantly evolving. Though my opinion is based on the information that is available to me today, some of the contents of this show could be outdated in the future. Be sure to check with trusted resources in case any of the information has been updated since this was published. If you or someone you know is in immediate danger, don't call me, call 911. If you're feeling hopeless or suicidal, call the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 800-273-8255. You can find more of my recommended organizations and helpful resources at drdrew.com/help.